inbox, subscribe to one of our newsletters. All the latest, all verified, all the time. Stay in the know with ABC News.
Making news, Australia supports a resolution to grant Palestinians more rights and privileges in the UN.
The rejection of Hamas is amongst the reasons why Australia voted for this resolution.
The federal government injects millions into housing while capping the number of international students at Australian universities and colleges. A political storm erupts in India after sexual assault allegations against an influential candidate aligned with Narendra Modi. And the Aurora Australis dazzles the night sky across Australia's southeast. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Jessica Rendall. Australia has backed a resolution that endorses a push for Palestinians to have full membership at the United Nations. Palestinians currently hold observer status, but the General Assembly overwhelmingly voted for expanded rights. North America correspondent Jade McMillan has more from Washington.
The resolution passed by the United Nations General Assembly states that Palestinians qualify for full UN membership. It recommends that the Security Council, which is the body that would have to approve such a move, reconsiders it after the United States used its veto power in the Security Council last month to block such a measure. The resolution also expands Palestinian rights in the General Assembly. That doesn't extend, though, to voting rights. So the immediate practical impacts of this resolution passing will be limited. Even if it is taken up again by the Security Council, the US could again use its veto power to block it. But this was a highly symbolic decision by the General Assembly. 143 members, including Australia, voted in favour of it. 25 members abstained and 9, including the United States and Israel, voted against it. The Palestinian representative to the UN argued that this was a step towards the peace process. The Israeli ambassador, though, rejected that, and he accused members who supported this resolution of rewarding Hamas.
In simple words, voting yes is the right thing to do. And I can assure you, you and your country for years to come will be proud to have stood for freedom, free Palestine, and peace for all. And I repeat, free Palestine, and vote yes for the resolution, and I thank you so much.
So today, I will hold up a mirror for you. A mirror. This is your mirror. So that you can see exactly what you are inflicting upon the UN Charter with this destructive vote. This is you are shredding the UN Charter with your own hands. Yes, that's what you're doing, shredding the UN Charter.
And Jade, has the Australian government said anything about why it supported this move?
Well, Australia's ambassador to the United Nations, James Larson, addressed the General Assembly shortly after this vote was taken. He said that Australia was frustrated at a lack of progress towards a two-state solution, that it believes that is the only hope for achieving peace, and that the international community can build momentum towards that. We have also now heard from the Foreign Minister, Penny Wong. She argued that this resolution was changed substantially since it was first proposed, and she also used a press conference. She said she wanted to directly address members of Australia's Jewish community. She said that she understood that people could be feeling distressed and isolated, but she argued that the only way to securing peace for Israel and security for Israel, in her view, is with the establishment of two states.
This vote is not about whether Australia recognises Palestine. We will do that when we think the time is right. What we would say, and what I do say, is Australia no longer believes that recognition can only come at the end of a peace process. It could occur as part of a peace process.
Now, this vote in the UN has come on the same day that the United States has released a report saying that Israel may have breached its international legal obligations through its use of American-supplied weapons in Gaza. It has also said at the same time, though, that its information is incomplete and it accepts Israel's assurances that it is complying. This comes as the US President Joe Biden has warned that he won't supply Israel with weapons for an all-out assault in the city of Rafah in Gaza's south. He has paused a shipment amid those concerns. Israel insists, though, that it is pushing ahead.
Jade McMillan reporting there, and the federal government is introducing new legislation to cap the number of international student enrolments in universities and vocational training colleges. The new framework is expected by the end of the year after consultation with the sector. The government says Australia's housing crisis has played a large part in its decision. The government will also tip billions of dollars of additional investment into building new homes in next week's federal budget as it chases a promise to build 1.2 million new homes by 2030. Under the Homes for Australia plan, $1 billion will be put towards crisis and transitional accommodation for women and children fleeing domestic violence. Another $1 billion will go towards funding for states and territories to build infrastructure needed for new homes. And for more on this topic, CEO of the Community Housing Industry Association, Wendy Hayhurst, joins us now. Wendy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Let's first start with your thoughts on this funding announcement. What was your initial reaction to it?
Well, we were very pleased to see the additional $1 billion that are going into domestic and family violence, and particularly into housing for young people. It's been something we've been arguing about for a very long time. Young people have not benefited from the investments the government's already made. So seeing that grant money in the budget is very, very welcome. And of course, we're seeing a crisis in domestic and family violence and women being forced to live in tents because there isn't sufficient emergency accommodation for them. So those elements of the budget, the additional billions that are going in, are very, very welcome.
In your view, though, do you think this goes far enough, particularly as we see the cost of living crisis continues to bite and it doesn't look like it'll be easing anytime soon? Would you like to see more done?
Oh, absolutely. We're hoping that yesterday's announcement was the first step and that we will see much more in the budget. So what there wasn't in the announcement was much additional money for long-term social housing. And that's what we really need, because emergency accommodation, transitional accommodation meets the immediate need. But what we need is long-term, stable, secure housing. At the last census, we know there were 640,000 households in housing stress or homeless. So we need a programme that's going to make up that shortfall and keep pace with the rising population as well. So we're really hoping that the budget has more, that we have an excellent initiative from the government, the Housing Australia Future Fund, doubling the investment in that in the budget would start to make real inroads into that shortfall.
Some very important promises there. Wendy, I just want to pivot slightly to the topic of international students. The federal government has unveiled plans to place caps on the number of international students that can come to Australia, in part because of these housing pressures that we are seeing. Do you often hear from international students struggling to put a roof over their heads once they arrive here in Australia?
Well, what we do hear of is real fierce competition for private rental in areas where there are universities. So we welcome international students coming, but we feel the universities should be doing more to ensure that there is accommodation for them. We know vacancy rates in inner cities are really low, That means we've seen those queues of people looking for available private rental. So it's very welcome that the government is saying to the universities, bring your international students over, but make sure you're investing in more student accommodation, taking the pressure off the private rental market and allowing more low-income families to get a decent place to live.
Wendy, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Well, there's been another fire at a tobacco store in Melbourne. Emergency services were called to the business in Epping at about 4 o'clock this morning. The exact circumstances surrounding the fire are not yet known, but police are treating it as suspicious. A Melbourne man has been charged over the alleged importation of more than 100 kilograms of methamphetamine concealed in sandals. Police say the man was unable to collect the shipment when he arrived in Sydney, so he drove to his Burwood home in Melbourne, where police searched the property. 2 mobile devices allegedly used to facilitate the importation and a fake licence were seized by police. Emergency services are assessing the damage caused by yesterday's tornado in WA's southwest. The tornado ripped through the town of Bunbury, damaging homes and injuring 2 people. The State Emergency Service says there are power outages and crews are still working out the full impact of the tornado. An evacuation centre has been set up in the suburb of Eton.
You see the cold fronts and you know there's going to be rain, but just the force of it. And obviously the damage that it's caused, it's a bit surprising.
To Europe now, and Russian forces have launched an armoured ground attack near Ukraine's second largest city of Kharkiv in the country's northeast. It opened a new front in the war that's been long waged in the east and south. Europe correspondent Catherine Diss reports. We don't quite have that report from Catherine Diss for you at the moment. We will just move on to our next story now. And an influential candidate allied with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been accused of sexually abusing multiple women. It set off a political storm in the middle of the country's general elections and has shifted the focus once again to the epidemic of sexual violence in India. South Asia correspondent Meghna Bali reports from New Delhi.
On the campaign trail in southern India, the hugely popular but polarising Prime Minister Narendra Modi appeals to his devoted followers. He's whipping up support for candidates allied with his party, the BJP, including this man.
Prajwal Ravana. Every vote you give him will make Modi stronger.
The grandson of a former PM, Prajwal Ravana and his influential party were meant to bring in votes for Mr. Modi. Instead, Ravana's in the middle of a political firestorm that could slash support for the alliance in key seats. He's been accused of sexually assaulting several women and making almost 3,000 videos of the abuse. Ravana, who has denied the allegations, fled to Germany as they began to surface. Senior opposition politicians and activists have accused the BJP of knowing about the videos and still choosing to form an alliance with Ravana. The ABC has also seen a letter dated last December, sent by a party member to a BJP minister about the allegations.
Despite knowing every detail, how could you make a man who's so engrossed in sexual violence, sexual crime against women, your candidate?
Mr. Modi says it's the opposition state government's responsibility to investigate the incident, but added he condemns the behaviour.
I am of the clear view that there should be zero tolerance for such people. Stringent punishment should be given.
This isn't the first time an Indian politician has been accused of sexual violence. In February, dozens of tribal women from a fishing village accused a leader from a different party, the TMC, of sexual abuse. One of the alleged victims has now been endorsed by Mr. Modi as an election candidate.
The level of torture has crossed its limit in the hands of the TMC hooligans, so my mothers and sisters here are not safe.
Mr. Modi held her appointment up as an example of how his party was empowering women.
I will help everyone here and work with them to make sure, as their MP, I fulfil all their demands.
But the move was panned by some as little more than political point scoring.
Every single day I get calls where girls are raped, killed, like in most brutal manner. But why they pick and choose the cases where they went all the way to Sandesh Khali and encouraged her to speak, you know, and then when she reports, you give her a ticket.
Studies across India have shown that when more women become involved in politics, there are lower rates of violence against women. But female representation in Mr. Modi's government has remained low in the last decade, sitting at around 14%. And activists say the few women who do wield power are at risk of becoming victims.
As long as women's political future will depend on these male politicians and under their control, well, women will face this kind of harassment. Because immediately that whole patron-client relationship develops. Immediately somebody is a giver and somebody is a taker.
Statistics show women are an increasingly influential group of voters, outstripping men in some parts of India. And the major parties have devoted significant time in their campaigns to courting them.
For the BJP, women's safety and dignity is paramount.
Policy experts say some of Mr. Modi's welfare schemes have helped women living below the poverty line, but they say not enough is being done to reduce violence against women.
The way 97,000 rape cases are pending in the courts are not delivering justice to these girls. And the way everybody points finger to the women, the victim is blamed, not these politicians, not these men who are brutalizing them or who are sexually harassing them.
India's 6-week election period continues, with results due June 4th. Meghna Bali, ABC News, New Delhi.
Former US President Donald Trump is continuing to test the judge at his hush money trial in New York by speaking out in defiance of a gag order imposed on him. Mr. Trump has been warned that further violations of the gag order could land him in jail after he was fined 10 times and held in contempt of court. Mr. Trump has lashed out at the prosecutors and the judge.
I'd be very proud to go to jail for our Constitution, because what he's doing is so unconstitutional. There's never been anything like it.
Prince Harry and his wife Meghan Markle are making their first visit to Nigeria since 2019. The trip was prompted by links to the Invictus Games, which is an international sporting event the Prince started a decade ago for military personnel wounded in action. Prince Harry's visit to Kaduna State included a stop at a Nigerian military hospital where he spent time with wounded soldiers. The rising cost of living is threatening the future of Australia's music industry. It's been found that Australian families are cutting back on children's music classes, and teachers are leaving the profession due to the drop in participation. Now there are calls for a national response to safeguard music education.
Music is at the heart of the Lees family. They've never questioned their children's tuition. As rent and expenses went up, they made a tough decision.
We had to sit down together and discuss about cutting back extracurricular activities like gymnastics, swimming, and even art classes. And it was a huge sacrifice for our family. We chose music.
But many families can no longer continue lessons as they battle the rising cost of living.
I just found that it's just not a priority at the moment. People are barely getting by.
A drop in participation is forcing teachers like Katrina Pingnam to rethink their careers.
I have actually considered alternative sources of income. It's getting quite tight at the moment.
The Melbourne Youth Orchestra this year had a record number of pleas for financial help.
More and more families are telling us that mortgage stress and the rising cost of living are making it harder and harder to pay for music lessons and music education.
National data shows children's participation in most creative activities declined between 2017 and 2022. The number of kids singing or playing an instrument fell from 23% to 19%. COVID hit during that time, but the music sector believes financial pressure is playing a part. Dr Jason Goopy from the Australian Society for Music Education is calling for a national scheme to fund music teachers in all schools.
This will ensure that it doesn't matter where you live or what family you're born into, you actually get a chance to receive a music education.
The government this week announced new payments for teaching students on practical placements, something it hopes will help aspiring music teachers.
The future of the Australian music industry is in peril. The likes of AC/DC, John Farnham, Guy Sebastian, Amy Shark, Baker Boy, these will be names of the past.
Talent the country can't afford to lose over cost. Emily Lawrence, ABC News.
The sky across Tasmania has been lit up with a vibrant aurora pink, creating a beautiful spectacle for southeast Australians. The lucky spectators were able to witness the stunning display early this morning as glimmering colours filled the sky. The Aurora Australis is considered the Southern Hemisphere's equivalent of the famed Northern Lights. And good news for those that missed out, there could be a chance to see the celestial event tonight.
When the sun has a magnetic eruption, the effects can impact the Earth's magnetic field, in this case causing a geomagnetic storm that disrupts the Earth's upper atmosphere and can cause the glows that are seen as the southern and the northern lights. It can be difficult to predict exactly when that's going to start and finish, in this case because there were multiple eruptions on the sun, and effectively the first eruption cleared the way for a second one to get here much more quickly and more powerfully than predicted.
Panthers superstar Nathan Cleary could miss next month's State of Origin opener after he re-injured his hamstring in Penrith's 16-10 win over the Bulldogs last night. The Blues halfback produced 2 big try-savers but left the field before half-time. Cleary is set to face another long stint on the sidelines, having only recently returned after a month off with the same injury. The Bulldogs crossed in the final minute of the match, but the 3-time premiers held on for a 4th straight victory. Cleary's injury, though, taking the shine off the win.
Yeah, he's pretty shattered, actually. Yeah, it's very disappointing for him. Obviously, I'm sort of torn between his coach and his dad right now as well, so yeah, very disappointing.
Brisbane handed the Eels a 3rd straight loss after the Broncos won 30-14 at Parramatta Stadium. The visitors were without injured skipper and halfback Adam Reynolds, but Reece Walsh, Dean Mariner and Ezra Mam took control of the match. Mariner scored a double, while superb defence and a solo chip and chase from Mam in the second half put the game beyond reach. The Sydney Swans have moved a game clear in top spot after claiming a 48-point win against Fremantle in Perth. It was an emotional night with both teams holding a minute's silence before the bounce to honour former Dockers and GWS player Cam McCarthy, who died aged 29. Will Hayward booted a game-high 4 goals and midfielder Isaac Heaney recorded 28 disposals. Jeremy Sharp booted 2 late goals for Fremantle, but Sydney won 13-9-87 to 4-15-39. It's the Swans' 8th win of the season. After the match, the Dockers laid flowers in the goal square in memory of McCarthy. Port Adelaide has spoiled Tom Hawkins' record-equalling 355th appearance for Geelong with a 6-point victory. 8 first-quarter goals set the tone for the Power, who led by 49 points during the second quarter. Willie Rioli booted 4 majors for the visitors and Kane Farrell nabbed 2. The Cats staged a second-half fight back but went down 15-11, 101 to 14-11, 95. Geelong recording back-to-back losses for the first time this season. The Central Coast Mariners' hopes of a historic treble remain on course after the Mariners came from behind to beat Sydney FC 2-1 in the first semi-final leg of the A-League. The Sky Blues took the lead in the first half through Joel King, but Josh Nisbet equalised for the Premiers and newly crowned AFC Cup champions on the stroke of half-time. A 56th minute penalty put the Mariners in front. Sydney was then reduced to 9 players when Jack Rodwell and Corey Holman were sent off. The return leg will be played next Saturday in Gosford with a place on the grand final on the line. The Queensland Reds.
We'll leave that there now and take you live to the Prime Minister who's speaking in Tasmania.
They're a part of our commitment to delivering for the whole nation, including here in Launceston, but right around this great state of Tasmania. And I'm really looking forward to Tuesday night's budget, which will have at its heart the 3 principles of cost of living relief, including through a tax decrease for every single Tasmanian taxpayer. Not just some, but everyone getting a tax cut in Tuesday night's budget. Secondly, to have further cost of living support that puts that downward pressure on inflation. And thirdly, a future made in Australia. Support here for construction, support here for making more things here in Australia, including, of course, the opportunity that's here in Tasmania in areas that it excels at, in the agriculture sector, in the maritime sector, in so many areas as well. Tasmania has a bright future if we're prepared to put in place the policies that enable a seizing of that future. I'll turn to Julie and then we're happy to take some questions.
Thanks, Prime Minister. It's great to be here with the Prime Minister and, of course, with my colleagues Brian Mitchell and Helen Polly. But I particularly want to thank Launceston City Mission and Senator Evolve for having us here on this site. As we've heard, this is a mixed development, private plus affordable rental plus social housing. That is what we want to see more of right across the country, more homes for Australia. That's what our housing package that the Prime Minister has outlined today is adding to our other measures for more homes for Australians. More homes to rent, more homes to build, more homes for Australians who need it. That is what Homes for Australia is all about. There are a whole range of announcements that we have made in the lead up to today. More than $25 billion in new investments from our federal government since the last election into housing and housing services. This is a significant investment to deliver more homes for Australia. We have an ambitious national target of 1.2 million homes from 1 July, including, of course, social and affordable homes. 30,000 social and affordable homes from the Housing Australia Future Fund, 10,000 affordable homes from the Housing Accord, 4,000 social homes from the Social Housing Accelerator, being delivered by our government, but importantly in partnership with other tiers of government and with the community housing sector and with industry. We all need to be working together. We need everybody with their shoulder to the wheel so that we can deliver the homes that Australia needs, the 1.2 million homes ambitious target. We announced earlier in the week more tradies to build more homes because we know that's critical.
And that's
Today
where our viewers on the main
more
channel will be.
Infrastructure for more homes. We're talking about more social homes at every opportunity.
Finding news you can trust should be a walk in the park, right? So keep it